You know this story. You can probably see it. A basement at Stanford. Mirrored sunglasses. Wooden batons. Ordinary college students handed a uniform, and within days they were humiliating other ordinary college students until the professor running it shut the whole thing down early. You've heard it in a documentary. Maybe you've used it in an argument about police, about soldiers, about how you can't really blame anyone because put anyone in that position and they do the same. Here's the part worth sitting with. You've almost certainly never checked it. And for 47 years, neither did anyone else. The tapes exist. Philip Zimbardo recorded the Stanford prison experiment in August 1971, and in 2011, he donated the archive, 16 boxes, to the Stanford Library, where anyone could walk in and listen. Almost nobody did. Not the textbook authors, not the documentary makers, not most of the critics. Then a French researcher, Thibault Le Texier, sat down with those boxes. Hundreds of documents, 6 hours of film, 48 hours of audio, interviews with 15 of the surviving participants. He published what he found in the journal American Psychologist in 2019 under the title Debunking the Stanford Prison Experiment. Start with the thing everyone remembers, that the guards invented the cruelty themselves. On Saturday the 14th of August, 1971, the day before the study began, Zimbardo sat the guards down and told them what he wanted. It's on tape. He says, we can create boredom. We can create a sense of frustration. We can create fear in them to some degree. He says we're going to take away their individuality in various ways. He says we have total power in the situation. They have none. That is not a scientist observing what a role does to a person. That's a brief. And the prison rules the guards supposedly improvised? 11 of the 17 were lifted, almost word for word, from a class project 3 months earlier, a mock prison run in a Stanford dormitory by undergraduates. The night counts. The push-ups. Numbers instead of names. Written in advance. Now it gets uncomfortable. There's an 18-minute tape of the prison warden, an undergraduate named David Jaffe, sitting down with a guard called John Mark. Mark's problem was that he wasn't cruel enough. Jaffe tells him the guards have to know that every guard is going to be what we call a tough guard. He tells him the study will produce serious recommendations for prison reform. He tells him to try and react as you picture the pigs reacting. A guard had to be talked into it. If the finding were real, if the uniform alone did the work, that conversation would never have needed to happen. Zimbardo never accepted this reading. He conceded the team asked all guards to be firmly in control, while insisting he gave no detailed instructions on how to be a guard. You've heard the orientation. And the most notorious guard, the one the prisoners nicknamed John Wayne. That was Dave Eschliman, a theater student. He said for years that he built the character deliberately, took the accent from the film Cool Hand Luke, and pushed hard because he thought the researchers needed something to work with. He wasn't swallowed by a role. He was doing improv, and he thought he was helping. Which leaves the breakdown. Prisoner 8612, a student named Douglas Corpy, screaming that he was burning up inside 36 hours in. The most replayed moment in the history of psychology teaching. Corpy has said, consistently for 5 decades, that he was performing. He'd taken the job for $15 a day, expecting to sit in a cell and study for a graduate exam. When they wouldn't give him his books, he asked to leave. He was refused. On tape, He explains that he decided he was getting out and would do anything, and the easiest option, the one that wouldn't hurt anybody, was to just act mad. Le Texier is careful here, and so am I. We cannot know what Corpy was actually feeling. What the archive shows is that he wanted to look like he was breaking down, and that he tried other exits first. And the reason he needed an exit at all should have sunk this study on its own. The protocol Zimbardo submitted to Stanford's Ethics Committee in July 1971 states that prisoners would be led to believe that they cannot leave. They were not trapped by the psychology of imprisonment. They were told they were trapped. Zimbardo said so himself afterwards. I think they really believe they cannot leave. Real distress did happen in that basement. People were sleep-deprived and frightened, and if any of this brushes something in your own life, that's worth taking to someone qualified, not to the internet. But the version you were sold, that half the prisoners had breakdowns, doesn't survive the records. Of the 11 prisoners, 5 left early. Le Texier's reading is that 2 showed anything resembling a genuine breakdown. So what actually holds up? Something does, and it's less flattering than the myth. In 1979, Australian researchers Lovibond, Mathiran and Adams put 60 volunteers through 3 mock prison regimes, 4 days each. Same kind of people, same building. Only the harsh custodial regime produced hostility. The regimes that gave prisoners some dignity and some say produced nothing dramatic at all. The variable wasn't the role. It was the system. And in 2002, Alex Haslam and Steve Reicher ran a prison study with the BBC. 15 men, 8 days, filmed. Their guards never really took up the part. They were uneasy with their power, reluctant to enforce it, and the prisoners walked out of their cells. It's one case study on television, and everyone knew it. Hold it loosely. But it didn't reproduce Stanford. Nothing has. Stanford has never been directly replicated. Haslam and Reicher's explanation is a hypothesis, not settled fact, and they say so themselves. The guards weren't overwhelmed by a costume. They were recruited. Jaffe didn't only tell John Mark to be harsh. He told him it was for prison reform. He gave him a cause. Which brings us back to you and the story you've been carrying. The version you knew said anyone would do it. The situation is too strong, don't judge. An extraordinarily comfortable thing to believe. It explains atrocity while implicating nobody, including you. The evidence says something harder. Cruelty in that basement had to be encouraged, rehearsed, justified, and dressed up as a noble project. And even then, at least one still said no. But look at what really happened. The tapes were public. The boxes were open. And a story that everybody found useful survived, unexamined, for 47 years, because checking it would have cost something and repeating it cost nothing. That's the finding. It was never really about the guards. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. If this video gave you something to think about, do one small thing. Subscribe to CoolMyMind Psychology. Every video here unpacks the hidden psychology behind how we think, feel, and act. And subscribing is how you'll never miss the next one. Take care of your mind, and I will see you in the next video.